Welcome to Norse Code, the number one podcast for your Minnesota Vikings. I'm your host, producer. My name is James Pagashnik. Thank you guys so much for listening. And at the other end of the tin cannon string, we have our analyst and co-host. You know him from numerous blogs and podcasts around the internet, most notably from the Wide Left Substack. He is Mr. Useful Human, Arif Hassan. Arif, I resent any of the accusations because they are patently false. It's interesting the amount of power that people think I have, which I don't. I was not responsible for this podcast being recorded on a Wednesday night.
I was wondering where that one was going.
I may be responsible for Robert Salas being fired, but it has nothing to do with this whole Wednesday thing.
I did my own research, and sorry, you did. You are responsible.
Damn. Well, I am not responsible, says the man with, what was the tweet? The man with the severed head in one hand and the knife in the other. Yeah, I don't know how to tell you this, Aaron, but Occam's razor.
Right.
Yeah, that. Welcome to this episode of Norse Code. Apologies for the delay, but someone had to no longer be in the UK in order to make this episode
I had
work.
to exit expeditiously.
Yes, as it turns out, something about a misunderstanding with the Natural History Museum. I don't know. Accusations have been made.
Okay, so the nature of possession of property starts at a very particular random arbitrary date. Okay, that's all I'm saying. That their claim to ownership over some specific items is very conveniently defined. Okay, so that's all I'm saying. Anyway, I'm not there anymore. We don't got to worry about it.
Nope, not anymore. Really out of their jurisdiction if you really think about it. So that's
right.
That works out for you. So we have a number of things to discuss, including the Vikings win over the Jets. The Vikings are 5-0. It was not as clean a game as we would have hoped, but the end result was the same. It's 5-0 for the Vikings going into the bye week. And the Jets fired their coach either as a result of this game or as a result of what happened with the Broncos. Accounts differ.
Okay, my favorite theory. My favorite theory is because Woody Johnson used to be the ambassador to the United Kingdom.
Yep.
Or ambassador to England, I think, specifically. That he got embarrassed in front of all of his friends, and so he needed to fire the head coach to kind of get over that embarrassment. I like that one. Like, yeah, we don't get the Rodgers angle. That's upsetting. I like having that angle. But that's a phenomenal. I love it.
I like the idea that he watched the Parent Trap celebration, and then that was the moment that it clicked.
That was the line.
Because you had all of the people on the defense like surrounding it just to see if they were going to be able to do it.
It's so good. Cam Bynum, after the game, said that we're on a generational run of celebrations. I love that energy so much.
Yeah. So we've got that. We've got a mailbag to talk about too. So we'll get to all of that. But first, thank you so much for listening to Norse Code. If you enjoy the show and would like access to things like the bonus episodes or the Discord, you can go over to patreon.com/NorseCode and join there. For $3.50 a month or a little less for the year-long subscription, you get access to all of that. Special thank you to Marty Branyan for signing up over on Patreon. Thank you so much. And you can also go to paypal.me/NorseCode as well if you want to give a one-time donation, or you can go to norsecode.threadless.com and get any number of wonderful Norse Code merchandise items like t-shirts, flags, all of these things that you can bring to the next live show, which is December 12th at the Union 32 Craft House in Eagan, Minnesota. We're going to be giving away a couple of things. We'll be doing a live show there. We've got some fun, some surprises. Maybe we'll find a home for Arif's body pillow. That seems like a wonderful thing we could do.
I don't have a body pillow.
No. I'm the one who has the body pillow of you. I will bring it to the show, and then we may find a home for it.
Okay, that makes me uncomfortable for completely different reasons, but okay.
Is this something I need to run by you in order to I've never had to run by cursed items to you before.
Okay, but think about it this way: if someone had a body pillow of you,
which you do,
and it was like, I'm gonna, well, you have one of me. I have a body pillow case. Is different.
I don't keep your body pillow case. Like, I don't have a pillow on it at all times. I don't. So we're in the same boat.
All the time. So sometimes
when we did the live show in Denver, it had it on.
Right, Dusty had to carry it in. There were a bunch of people watching him.
People just carrying. I believe we've told the story before, but Dusty was carrying in this waifu pillow with a reef on it, and somebody yelled out, "Hey, that guy's carrying a porn pillow into the bar."
Dusty just had to absorb it.
Yep.
But okay, so I'm just saying, if someone had a body pillow of you and we're like, hey, I'm going to bring this to a show where it's going to be an attraction and someone who wants it is going to win it, you wouldn't have any questions about the person who wants the body pillow of you? Like, not one?
No. I would just want
I don't believe you.
I would just want it out of the I know I would just want it out of the house, just like I wanted the Treadwell jersey out of my house.
I'm just saying, it's just the existence of it is disturbing. I agree. The existence of the Arif body pillow is disturbing. But you put that existence in a different context, i.e. someone wants it, that's more disturbing, right? Like, you get like how that can happen, right?
Oh, I understand your potential hangups. I'm just saying that I'm much more cut and dry on that sort of thing. I just want an item out of my house. So, we'll see.
Great.
Apparently, this is what therapy has done for me. I don't know what to tell you.
That you hurt other people for your own benefit? That's what therapy did for you?
Yes. Dave and I have been having fun doing this over in the Discord.
Oh, my God.
We'll discuss that in a little bit. But again, thank you guys so much for listening to the show. Let's get into it. Arif, you were over there for the game. First things first, what was the spread like in the press box since you were back in the press box area?
It's been a while, Jesus. Pre-game, pretty good. It was a pretty great spread. Trying to remember everything I had, but it was like, oh yeah, there was like roast beef with like the mildest horseradish sauce I've ever seen. Doesn't matter. They had mashed potatoes and gravy. I just used the gravy. And it's not like the horseradish sauce was bad. It just was milder than you'd expect. Potatoes and sweet potatoes roasted. Great. Very good. Very few press boxes I've been to have had better pregame or mid-game meals. So really high up there, probably definitely top 10, probably top 5. Mid-game, what are we doing? It was chips, and like overcooked chicken tenders. That was it. I mean, like there was a vegetarian option too. I didn't want to like take it from the vegetarian. So I don't know what that one's about. I've had equivalently good mid-game meals, but they like set it up, right? They set up the expectation before the game. So I was expecting more and got disappointed, right? It was an average mid-game meal made worse by the comparison to the pre-game meal.
So basically what you were looking at was an allegory for what happened with the Vikings there in the first half to the
Holy
to halftime.
Crap, I didn't even think about that. Yes.
So that's pretty much what ended up happening.
Wow.
Is that we ended up in this great position where the Vikings were able to put up a good lead, pick off Aaron Rodgers twice, not allow the Jets a first down until the second quarter, and things kind of fell apart in the end. I just hope that you got like a nice mint in the way of an like to help with the interception at the end of the game to like put you on your way.
Nope. Okay, I got this actually, and I don't even know if I told you the story. No, so the locker room / the press area for interviews was like 3 times further away than I'm used to it being. So it was like really far away. And so I packed up really quickly after the game to get going. I go there. It's so much further away than I thought. They have a couple more of it, like 1 or 2 more availabilities than I expected to. So they've got more people doing press conferences. So that takes longer. And I'm like, okay, so the travel distance was long. The interview process was a little bit longer. I've really got to hurry up to get this story out. So I have to like book it all the way back. I do that. I write the piece. It's a crazy piece about like the Titanic or whatever. the people who read it liked it. My metrics are saying not very many people read it, but everybody who read it really effing liked it. So please read it. It's about like the history of the New York Titans, which was the team that would become the New York Jets, the Titanic, which I visited that museum in Belfast, and then a little bit about the game too. But I write that up. I finished writing it up. My laptop is almost out of batteries, so I'm like, okay, great. So I'll plug my laptop in. I open my bag. I don't have my laptop charger in there. I'm like, oh Jesus! So I left it in the press box. No, I didn't leave it in the United States. No, I left it in the press box. Like, okay, great. I figured that the press box is locked by now, so I'm like, I'm kind of effed. So I go up to the press box. It's actually open, but it's no longer there. I'm like, oh Jesus, okay. So I go to security. I'm like, hey, did anyone turn in like a laptop charger or something like that? They're like, no, we haven't seen it. And so I describe it, and they're like, okay. Here's our number. You can call us tomorrow morning if someone turns it in. I'm like, okay, great. I don't want to do that because it is an hour-long travel from my hotel to Tottenham. Tottenham is like north of the city center of London. I'm somewhat close, but to the west of the city center of London. City center. It's London is a city, and it's also divided into multiple cities. Weird arrangement. It's kind of like how the United Kingdom is a country that's also divided up into 4 countries. Very stupid system they have there. There's nothing in the United States that is stupid. I will contend that. So don't have to worry about the comparison there. They are the only illogically set up country. So City of London is the city center I'm referring to, which is separate from all of the other cities in London that are part of London, the city. Anyway, Tottenham, the White Hart Lane, Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, fairly far north by transit, 45 minutes, maybe an hour from where I was. So I'm like, I really don't want to do that. So I just stayed in the media area watching the other football games as they happened without my computer because it's now run out of power. And just like waiting until it gets close to when they kick me out. Right as they kick me out, I'm like, oh, I have to go to security because I just wanted to wait as long as possible so that my charger would show up. So I go to security. And as soon before I even talk to them, I see it on the table. That's my charger. Oh, fantastic. I go to talk to them. And I'm like, oh, hey, so I came here like a couple hours ago looking for my laptop charger. Looks like you have it. It's a Lenovo charger. That's mine. Sorry, I left it in the press box. Can I have it? I also left my outlet adapter, right? UK to US, and the little pouch for my binoculars. They have the pouch. They don't have the outlet adapter. That doesn't bother me so much. I brought a backup, so it was a kind of expensive outlet adapter because it's like universal, but like whatever, it's fine. And they're like, okay, so where did you leave this? And I was like, yeah, the press box. I'm like, okay, you can't have this. I was like, excuse me. And they're like, well, you said you left it in the press box. That's not where this was. I was like, okay, well, obviously someone moved it from the press box to somewhere else, and then someone else moved it from that place to where you are. So how can I prove that this is mine? Because the only reason you have this policy is so that people don't take other people's laptop chargers. I understand that. I described to you the laptop charger beforehand, and it matches that description. So I think, 1, that's a pretty good indicator. It's a Lenovo charger, right? That's 2. I can describe some of the specs of that laptop charger without looking at it. That's a pretty good test. It's a 300 watt, 20 volt laptop charger that does 50 to 60 hertz, right? Like, that's pretty good. Please, can I have it? And they're like, no. And I was like, okay. The little cord that's designed to wrap up the cords, like the little strip, that Velcro is half worn off. How many laptop adapting chargers do you have where that's the case? And he looks at it, he sees that that's the case, and he goes, no. I'm like, oh, okay, are you kidding me? Why would you even look to confirm it if you were just going to say no?
At no point did you think to just slip him a tenner?
There's security cameras everywhere, James. It's security.
I'm saying you be discreet.
Okay, I feel like at that point, it becomes, I want my laptop charger back without, like, at that point, if I fail the bribery, he very immediately suspects it's not mine, right? Like, that's the problem. So I argue with this dude for half an hour, maybe longer, 45 minutes, because Like, that's my job, right? Like, not the arguing, but the laptop charger is functionally at this point my job. I'm not going to be able to do stuff without it. Okay. Eventually, the supervisor shows up. He doesn't call the supervisor just shows up. He's like, well, what's going on here? Like, that's my laptop charger. You're not letting me have it because of a very specific and stupid policy. And the guy goes, okay, like, what is it? And it's like, okay, the laptop charger was in the press box and it was moved from there. And since then, someone gave it to you from wherever it was moved to. And because I said I found it in the press, or I left it in the press box, I can't have it. And the guy goes, okay, well, where did you find it? Because the guy wasn't going to tell me where he found it, because I'm just going to claim that's where it was actually. Like, I get why he didn't tell me where he found it. And he goes, oh, it was in the M Cafe. The M stands for media. Like, it was in the media cafe. Obviously, someone moved it from the press box to the press workroom. Like, clearly. And I was like, oh, the M Cafe? You mean the media cafe? You mean the press cafe? And the security guy who is giving me the runaround is like, oh, yeah, were you there? And I was like, yeah, man, it's where I work. I work in the press box, and then I work in the media workroom, the M Cafe. And the guy goes, oh, okay, that's probably yours then. I was like, that's what I have been trying to explain for 45 minutes.
Boy, you were a few minutes away from having to scam an overseas target there.
and the guy goes, okay, can you describe something about the laptop charger that's like unique to it? And I was like, well, it's a Lenovo laptop charger. It's not a universal charger. I would only be able to use it because I have a Lenovo, and it's 300 watts, 20 volts. And he looks at it and he goes, yeah, that's obviously his. I was like, oh, okay, great. And the guy goes, well, I couldn't give it to him because of policy. He says, like, the very annoying British accent. And it's like, okay, this guy works security. I would not win if I strangled him, but I'm considering it.
Well, you had your Stephon Gilmore moment.
So this is not even the end of the story. So I get my charger back. I go back into the media workroom where they immediately kick me out. Fine. I'm going home, and I'm like, okay, I could take transit. It's going to take me another 40 minutes, an hour. I am just at wit's end. I've too much of a day already. So I just call an Uber, right? And I'm in the Uber, and I'm like, okay, my phone is at like 9%. It needs to be on by the end of this Uber trip, I imagine. I actually don't know. I'm sure it would drop me off. It'd be fine. But I'm like, I have this like anxiety about it not being on. I'm sure most of you can relate. Okay, so I've got a portable battery bank, right? I plug it in. My phone just doesn't recognize it. It's just not charging. Okay, what the hell? So I remove the USB-C cable. I'm like, maybe something wrong with the cable. I grab another USB-C cable. That cable is already attached to my phone charger. I pull it out, and it breaks inside of my phone charger. Like, the metal part just lodges itself into the phone charger. I pull out the cord, and one end just doesn't have a USB-C input. Like, it just doesn't, it's gone. And I look in, and there's just a mangled scrap of metal attached to my phone charger. I'm like, okay, well, I can't use this USB-C cable. The other one doesn't work with my battery bank. I'm effed. Oh, I did bring up a backup awful battery bank that's like a couple ounces, so it doesn't weigh anything. So I was able to charge my phone. I have so many backups, and all of them were used on this trip. It's crazy. Backup charger. I brought my backup mouse. I left my mouse at the hotel. I had my backup mouse. I left the dongle in the United States. Good work. So I was on the touchpad in the rain. It sucked, but it's an awful day. But I'm able to charge my phone. I get back to the hotel. I like dig out the remnants of the USB in the phone charger. I do have a backup phone charger, but it's like 45 watts. And this one's 100 watts. It's so good for charging. It can even charge my laptop, kind of. So like, I wasn't screwed if I didn't have my laptop charger, but my laptop does expend more energy than the charge that comes in. So it can only really be charged when it's off, but it's an option, right? Anyway, I love this phone charger. It's incredible. So I need to salvage it. So I dig out the USB-C stuff. I see there are metal fragments still in there. That's how ruined it got. So I like blow it out. I know you're not supposed to do that. for a couple of reasons. One, you're not guaranteed to get all the metal shards out. Two, you're introducing moisture into a contact point that runs power. But I'm like, I have to have this. So I blow it out, and then I wave it around as if that's going to dry it from all the moisture I just introduced. I don't know. Put my original USB-C cord in. It works perfectly. So now there's just something wrong with my battery bank and not my USB-C cord, but at least that's working. Anyway, that was, I don't even know why I told this story. That's what London was like for me.
It was just a series of situations that became much more complicated than they needed to be. Much like the game.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm so glad I'm neurotic about backup devices and stuff, though. Holy crap.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the game and the fact that while the Vikings won, the offense did not look as smooth as it had in games past. And the defense was able to get in and seal the game for Minnesota. But let's start with Sam Darnold, because a lot of things have been written about Sam Darnold, whether or not this is a regression or at least showing the true Sam Darnold. And the question is more of a thing is this, I guess, is this the Sam Darnold that we should expect moving forward, or is this the one that can't seem to get his grip in a situation where it's raining on a soccer field?
So the Vikings insist that wasn't like an issue. Grip wasn't an issue. I have some difficulty with that, just because they always say that about conditions, because they don't want to be perceived as making excuses. Remember when the Vikings explained that they brought the wrong cleats to Green Bay, and for whatever reason, people thought that was like them making excuses, when actually they were taking the blame for not wearing the correct cleats, and it was their fault. And they didn't think that it reflected well on them that they didn't do that, but people still thought somehow that was making excuses. It's because of that. It's because people are weird about that kind of stuff. And so I actually don't know if that means anything. That they insist. But I am concerned about the trajectory of Sam Darnold's play. It feels as if every single game that he's played is worse than the previous game. His best game was week 1, his second best game was week 2, and so on. And the last 2 games have genuinely been pretty poor play. This one was the worst one, right? As the pattern would suggest, right? And I'm concerned about that and what that means. Trends can just emerge in 5-game samples like that. It may not matter at all. But, Sam Darnold does stupid stuff. Sometimes it results in turnovers. Sometimes stupid stuff happens around him that's not his fault. Like in this case, it was the pitch to Ty Chandler. Results in turnovers. So it's something to kind of monitor. The Vikings defense, unless it's like playing at a level that is historic, is not going to continue doing this. And there's going to have to be a couple of games here or there where you're going to need the offense to function really well, and in particular Sam Darnold to function really well. So that's an issue. I thought that he was playing poorly before the conditions kind of set in and made things really difficult for everybody, because that definitely was something that was kind of a change in everyone's play at halftime. And there are some things that are not Sam Darnold's fault. Like a lot of his throws, especially to Jalen Naylor, were instances where Naylor slipped. In one instance, it's very obvious Naylor fell down. A lot of other instances, it's not obvious on the broadcast footage from what I can tell. I haven't watched the broadcast footage. But it seems like it's not obvious. He slipped on some of these routes too. He just didn't fall down, and so the ball sails a little bit. But even when we remove that, it felt like he was playing pretty poorly and making some pretty bad decisions, and in particular forcing the ball to Justin Jefferson a lot, which we'll talk about Jefferson. We had a couple of questions about that too. It's, again, the Vikings have put themselves in a situation where we can be pretty nitpicky and be, dissecting wins and stuff like that. It's a really good place to be. But now that we're here, let's talk about it and talk about kind of areas where the Vikings could fall short and maybe not live up to some of the marquee matchups they'll have later on down the season, like the ones they have against the Lions, or maybe ones that they'll have in the playoffs if they continue on this trajectory. So, I am worried that Sam Darnold will not play to the level that we saw in the first 3 games.
it was frustrating, especially after watching Aaron Rodgers have success in the just at that point in the game. And it wasn't just, airing it out. It was the strategy involving, just either short dump passes or handing it off. And it seemed like everything was soaring over the receivers' heads.
Yeah. Yeah, so Rodgers decided to alter his strategy, I think in large part, actually, not in response to what the Vikings defense was doing, although that is a good response to what the Vikings defense was doing, but more in response to the fact that he definitely got hurt on a takedown. I don't think it was a sack. I think it was a quarterback hit.
It was a quarterback hit.
Yeah. Where he goes out of the game, and then there was a penalty. Jesus. There's a penalty, and so he gets the offense.
The
gets
most
to go back on.
light roughing the kicker you've ever seen.
Yeah, technically by the writing of the rule, right, by the letter of the law, that is roughing the kicker. So fine. Odd one to call, especially when you didn't call one on Ryan Wright later. I'm just please, but the refs were bad in this game, by the way. It just happened to be bad to both teams, so fine. After that, his time to throw quickened substantially. His average depth of target got like much shorter, right? He was really only throwing short passes. When you look at the chart from Next Gen, it looks like there was only like one pass, whatever, past 10 yards or something like that. And so it all looks short, but it was really short after that injury. He's getting the ball out really quickly. And the problem is that also happens to be an effective response against the Vikings defense, the way that they've set it up. And they were having success with it from an execution standpoint too. They were breaking tackles and stuff. So pretty frustrating that that's happening at the same time that the Vikings offense is like stalling a lot, right? Yeah, I mean, which is how like these kind of comebacks are made, right? Like comebacks that you allow are both a defensive and offensive stat, right? Like obviously the defense has to give up yards and points for a comeback to happen, but the offense has to not keep up their end of the bargain too, and that's what happened here.
It's real frustrating. And obviously with the fact that Aaron Rodgers, because it's Aaron Rodgers and he's haunted Vikings dreams for a number of years, it's hard to watch him be successful for any reason, really. But in particular, you just sat there and went, yeah, this feels like it's going to end up being a Rodgers game by the end of it. But let's talk a little bit about Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones was doing well in the beginning of the game and ended up going out with an injury. They did have an MRI, and it looked like the bye week helps. But it looked like this was going to be a situation where nothing was really damaged, but he looks like he's going to be week to week. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, that's what it seems like. It was kind of interesting after the game because we asked about Aaron Jones, and he just like gave us no details, but the tone was, I'm not going to say optimistic. It was not pessimistic. And he was like, we'll check in, it seems like it's not, super serious, but we got to double check. We got to get a diagnosis. It was like a hip. And I was like, that's all you can take from it because you can't describe it as optimistic. So he's had his MRI. O'Connell says that like they've avoided a long-term injury based off of the information that they have so far. He's week to week, like you said. So that's what we have. We don't really know his prognosis against the Lions. We'll probably know in the week heading up, but it looks like it's not a big deal. A lot of beat writers, at least when I was following them on Twitter and listening to their questions in the presser, seem to suggest that the Vikings offense stalled when Aaron Jones went out, which from a timeline perspective is true. But I don't think that's the reason, right? And this isn't like a running backs don't matter thing, although it is a little bit that. But it's also like the offensive line was definitely playing poorer as the weather conditions got worse for them, right? Ty Chandler isn't as good a back as Aaron Jones. Like that's obvious, but there weren't as many lanes opening up for him. And it was pretty clear he also like was missing cutbacks and stuff like that. Very annoying. But the receivers like slipping on their routes. That's not like if Aaron Jones was healthy, he's not going to make them not slip on their routes. Right. So not like a huge thing for me. certainly would have been nice to have him, because if you just have a little bit more production at the running back position, you're probably keeping this game out of comeback contention. You don't need an interception on the final drive in the red zone, which is like a very tense place to be, if Aaron Jones is healthy. So in some sense, yeah, that was a pretty big difference in this game. But in another sense, it was like, it's not his fault all the failures happened. It's just, without him, some of the runs that went for 2 yards might go for 6. And that's a huge change. You hold on to the ball for a little bit longer. Maybe you kick a field goal that you wouldn't have kicked, right? And so that would have been nice, but yeah.
And Ty Chandler is much better in small bursts. Putting Ty Chandler in a position where he's running back 1 is not
it seems like that's just not. Yeah, he seems like he performs better as a backup. And I don't know if it's because the change of pace forces defenses to play the angles a little bit differently, or if he wears down really quickly in games or what, but our evidence suggests that he's been better without the full workload.
Yeah, which was unfortunate, because he definitely got a lot of it, and you could tell Aaron Jones was upset and wanting to go in, just like because of the shots on the sideline with him taped up. Just looking at it, I was trying to figure out if it was his hamstring or if it was his hip, based on the way that it was like iced up and taped. But apparently it's his hip, so we go off of that. But yeah, there was passes sailing. There was it wasn't as effective of an offense, and things didn't end up going quite the way that the Vikings would have liked on offense. However, on defense, this was a pretty good performance where they were getting to Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, they hit the crap out of him. I was about to swear. Yeah, dude, they knocked the tar out of him. Man, I sometimes sound like Ben Solak on this podcast.
Old timey, is that?
They really whipped his knickers.
Aaron Rodgers was consistently giving that face of,
he was mollywopped. Yeah,
oh,
for sure.
Come on.
What?
Just, that was the look on his face, was just, oh, come on, for most of the game. And and most of these players on his team were people that he was like campaigning to be on there to begin with.
Yeah, they were wish list players.
Yeah. Alan Lazard, balls flying through his fingers. Nothing.
So 11 quarterback hits, 3 sacks. In addition to that, also like 9 passes defended, which is kind of nuts. Defensed, I think is the way the NFL uses that term. Kind of British, if we think about it. The Harrison Smith sack is maybe my favorite one. Because, I tweeted this out, but like, the moment the ball was snapped, it was so obvious what was going to happen. I just said, oh no. Like, I did like the quietest. I think only Tom Schreier heard me. He was sitting next to me. But like, I was like, oh no. Like I was about to watch somebody die, right? I was like, oh, disaster's afoot. Like I was like, oh God. It's like one of those moments that like removes you entirely from like, I dislike Aaron Rodgers, whatever. It removes me entirely from like this context of fandom, and I'm just watching a train wreck that no one else sees but me and Harrison Smith, right? That had to be my favorite one. But yeah, they beat the crap out of him, and like he had a pretty quick time to throw, like I said, in the second half, and they still got to him pretty quickly. So a lot of it is like a lot of these blitz designs. I mean, the blitz designs just had him in hell, right? Like the Andrew Ginkle pick was off of a well-designed blitz. I say well-designed. It's also a fairly basic and simple one. I'm surprised he got baited by it. But like, they showed interior pressure in terms of blitzes at the beginning of the game, and they transitioned later to getting pressure from the outside. They ran some stunts and twists. I think there's a really good one from Jonathan Grenard, who eventually went up the middle. But also, like, what's kind of crazy is that Grenard, like, had the center's number. Like, he just knew when the ball was going to be snapped. Like, he was doing the Everson Griffin stuff without, the penalty, right? Like, he was jumping right off the snap. And he already has good burst, and so his ability to just, like, be annoying as, like, a member of the pass rush was, like, awesome to watch. I think he had 3 quarterback hits alone. Like, he didn't have a sack, but he had a phenomenal pressure rate and a bunch of hits. So, they were abusing that offensive line. They were destroying the protection. Aaron Rodgers did not have a really good answer for defining the protections to prevent that from happening. And so he got roughed up.
There was a video that came out today, I believe it was today or yesterday, of Blake Cashman mic'd up. And there's this great shot of him almost getting a sack on Aaron Rodgers. And they're both on the ground, and as they get up, Rodgers like grabs the back of his where his neck guard would be. Like grabs that just as I saw you there. I saw you like right there. And like Rodgers had like a laugh there for a moment, but you could tell he was getting frustrated. You can tell that like this offense was having serious issues, especially in the first half. Was dinking and dunking its way to success in the second half, but this was and here's the thing with Aaron Rodgers, he can still occasionally get it in a place where his wide receiver is able to get it and no one else can. Like he can drop a couple of buckets in like really great ways, but that is the rarity of his throws right now. They are...
Well, actually, so here's what I think is happening. I think it's that he and his receivers are completely out of sync. I still think, for the most part, the throws are going in places only the receiver has access to. I think the receiver doesn't know what to do, which is why I think Allen Lazard is the leading receiver on that team, which is very stupid.
Well, even just looking at Lazard, like he's obviously the guy who's getting targeted the most, but if that's the case, then there are ways to like get on track with your guys, and let's go to training camp, you utter dumbass. Like there's things you can do to get on. Sorry, if I'm going to go
kind of. So here's the problem with Aaron Rodgers. He does not tell his receivers what his signals are in training camp. He refuses to. And so anybody who's new to Aaron Rodgers has to kind of learn them on the fly and in practice once the season starts. And so it is famously very difficult for new receivers to be in sync with Rodgers. There's a whole story written by Kalen Kaler at The Athletic about this. It is tough to generate chemistry with Rodgers because he makes it tough on purpose. So that like if a receiver gets cut in training camp, he can't like spill all the secrets about what the secret signals are. So, which is like silly because some people get cut after a couple of years playing with him and some people get cut during the season, whatever. So there's a whole deal where it's actually really difficult to develop chemistry with him, but you can also see on the tape, like, because I was able to identify pretty easily live. There are just instances where the receiver expects the ball at the other shoulder. And once you understand that that's what's happening, a lot of these balls are perfectly placed passes. Just the receiver turned the wrong way. A lot of it is happening with Garrett Wilson. And what's interesting is that both Kurt Warner and JT O'Sullivan have the same take about Garrett Wilson and his route running, which tells me that there's probably something to it. Now, the tweet of Kurt Warner explaining this, in my opinion, is worded in a way that sounds stupid. And the tweet goes something like, Garrett Wilson is winning too quickly in his routes or something like that. And it's like, well, how in the world could that be a problem? Well, what Kurt Warner is actually saying, what JT O'Sullivan says later when he releases his video, is that Garrett Wilson, when he wins, so he's got a really great release off the line of scrimmage. When he does that, he runs his route to get to space as opposed to get to where the quarterback expects him to be. And so he'll break off his routes early. And Rodgers has explained that he needs more patience from Garrett Wilson. So this all matches up, actually. And so a route that is supposed to break off at like 20 yards, he'll break off at 16 yards. And I've explained before how much of a problem that can be. That is in particular a problem with Aaron Rodgers, who likes to throw the ball before the receiver breaks, which is how you're taught to do it, but very rarely can people actually do it and throw with that kind of anticipation. It's what makes Brock Purdy an effective quarterback. Really, no other skill Brock Purdy has is as important as anticipation is to his game. And Rodgers is a very anticipatory thrower. And so he's getting rid of the ball before you break, which means you need to be exactly where the F he wants you to be. Otherwise, that ball is going to sail or it's going to look off. And he did have some balls that didn't make any sense, like one to Garrett Wilson. That was the pick by Harrison Smith. That one's just a Rodgers mistake. There's nowhere Garrett Wilson could have run that made sense for Rodgers to throw that ball. So sometimes it's
Harrison
not that.
Smith interception. Are you talking about because it was Cam Bynum and it was Van Ginkel.
Cam Bynum's interception. Yeah, it was Cam Bynum's interception. Sorry, confusing all the safeties. Um, yeah, the Cam Bynum, it was because it was like right to him, right? It was like an overthrow, right to Cam Bynum. Yeah. Also, I think Harrison Smith has picked off Aaron Rodgers more than anyone else. I know he was the one to break the home pick streak for Rodgers, which is very funny. But yeah, the chemistry he has with his receivers is awful. And when JT O'Sullivan breaks it down, he's like breaking down this corner route where he's breaking it off at 16 yards. He should be breaking it off at 20 yards. The ball can arrive at 22 yards or something like that. And so these balls are sailing when they really shouldn't be. And O'Sullivan compared Wilson to Ocho Cinco, which immediately that clicked for me because Ocho Cinco's problem with any non-Carson Palmer quarterback was that he would just make stuff up and run his own route, and he would go to space. Palmer was fine with that. He would eventually have a good understanding of what Ocho Cinco wanted to do and how he was going to respond to what was happening, and so he'd just deal with it. Brady did not like that at all, and so Ocho Cinco lasted like half a year with the Patriots. So that's what's happening with Wilson is that he's playing a lot more improvisationally. And so Rodgers is playing the worst football of his career, or maybe it's since 2015, whichever. But he's not playing nearly as poorly as the statistics would suggest. His game against Denver, almost entirely the problem of his offensive line. When he had the ability to throw the ball, he was doing a pretty good job. Now, his mobility is gone, and that was a trademark of his playing style. So it's clear that he can't play the way that he would like to play, and so he's not playing as well. But I think a lot of this is on the Jets.
And, well, firing your defensive-minded head coach doesn't do anything for your offense, but that's conspiracy theory talk, and we don't want to talk about that. However, we can talk about the performance by the defensive line and by the safeties and by the corner. So, overall, how did you feel like the defense handled the situation, even in the second half?
I think they did pretty well. Obviously, you'd want them to tighten up a little bit to prevent, the stuff that was happening in the second half. But I don't really want to blame them too much because the scoring drives, some of them were off of like extremely short fields, which is obviously the offense or special teams' fault. When you look at like the drive chart, let me take a look at the possession chart. It's mostly pretty good, right? It's like, so you take a look at like the end of the second quarter. So you see a punt. Great. Good job. It was a 4-yard, 4-play drive. Great. Good job. Then the touchdown drive, which was only 31 yards because of the short field. Then a punt. Then a long field goal drive that was 83 yards. Punt. Then the touchdown drive, which was only 46 yards. Then the interception, which was, unfortunately, it was a long drive. It was another 40-plus yard drive. Long, maybe the wrong word for it. But there was only one drive over 50 yards, right? And if you have a field position where you're constantly giving it to your opponent at the 30, which is like a pretty good barometer, most of these drives aren't touchdowns, right? They're 40 yards. You get to the 70, you get to score a field goal. So that's fine. There's only one drive over 50 yards. I think the defense mostly did well and were put into a bad position. Let's see, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So there's like 14 drives in this game, which is kind of a lot. The average team gets 12, and none of them were kneel down, so it's slightly even more than that. I thought the defense, again, there was a comeback, and you don't love that, but I thought the defense mostly did fine. I mean, you hold them to 17 points, right? Like, that's good.
And Aaron Rodgers definitely had the look of somebody who wanted to no longer get hit. Like,
he was not having a good time.
That one, the Wilhelm scream moment as he's falling back after the QB hit that clearly banged up his knee a bit. Yeah,
the one that Art Sports turned into the Medusa. Yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah, that was a reminder that this is what is going to remain for you if you stay in the league. And I refuse to feel bad for Aaron Rodgers for any number of reasons.
Right,
but there was a certain amount of joy.
Extremely good chance this is the last time he's ever played the Minnesota Vikings. I'm so glad that he went out on a good memory.
Yeah, exactly. Although I do just on the Jets, and I know people are tired of listening to everyone on the planet try to dissect what is wrong with the Jets and what's not. If you're going to be a quarterback and you're going to make things as difficult as possible on your wide receivers, at that point, if gelling with your receivers is a big issue and one of the reasons why you are not winning games, Are you better off with somebody like a Jameis Winston?
I mean,
It's a drop off in quality, yes.
it sounds so stupid to even consider it, right? Probably not, but it
But
is an interesting question, and that's a problem.
yeah, if you want to be in a situation where the offense knows what they're doing, like knows what everybody's doing, it's not the worst idea. Although, because clearly Cleveland's not doing anything with Deshaun Watson. They're going to keep putting him out there, Mr. Sunk Cost and all of that. So maybe you make a play. Or maybe Devontae Adams ends up coming out there, which I still struggle with the idea of how they're going to make that potential trade work. That's a mess.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, it is.
There's not much more we can add. We're a couple days removed from the game, and the Vikings offense did not do as well as they would have liked. And we've got some questions on the offense as well in the mailbags. We're just going to go to the mailbag and go to Kyle Segal, who apparently is, while he is in the Tampa area, is apparently at high ground. So good for you, Kyle. Hopefully you're nowhere near Tropicana Field. Kyle asks, the Jets squeaked past a bad Titans team and beat an awful Patriots team, and are notably led by a peyote-addicted lunatic quarterback who is now also awful at football. Yet we needed a miracle interception to outlast them. Why is this team more 2016 than 2017?
Oh my God, Kyle. Okay. 1. Oh my God. 2. Okay, so the Jets were a 2-2 team before the Vikings played them, right? That is not like a high quality team, but that's like an average team. Average teams will sometimes beat awful teams like the Patriots, and sometimes will squeak past bad teams. That happens. It's fine. The Jets have the best secondary in the NFL, period. And it's okay to beat those teams, even when their quarterback play isn't up to snuff. And this is like the worst game Rodgers played. That's like pretty meaningful. This team is clearly more 2017. I don't even know what to do about that because like both teams were disappointing and weird in their own ways. But yeah, definitely more 2017. Not close. You've got a YOLO quarterback that's performing really well. You've got receivers that are bailing them out. That's fantastic. You've got a defense that's like a top 3-ish defense in the NFL, depending on how you use your sliders. Yeah, that's what this is.
Let's go to Skimbleshanks the Railway Cat, who asks, what opposing quarterback has gotten ginked the hardest this season?
I would say Daniel Jones. I think the pick and the pick six, because he had 2 picks in that game, right? I mean, AVG, it's AVG, right? Ginked him so hard in that game. I don't like... Aaron Rodgers got hit, so that's pretty bad. Getting ginked that way is pretty bad. But it really just feels like he went off. Yeah, he had 2 quarterback hits, an interception, a pass deflection. One of those hits was a sack. Like, he had the full gink experience, I think, in that game. So Daniel Jones is up there. See, who else? Like... Because he almost got picks twice against Brock Purdy, but didn't actually get a pick in that game. Aaron Rodgers is probably the best other example.
I think
right?
The Aaron Rodgers one was good because that was he had tricked him. He had absolutely tricked him and was in the right place and just ran for it and got the pick 6 on it, and just not a person was near him to touch him. Like, it was perfect. In my mind, that is the perfect gink experience, because he did just get the one interception against the Giants. There was just the one interception.
Yeah,
Harrison Smith got the second one.
But I do want to say having a sack and a hit besides, and an interception and a pass deflection, like all of those together, having the full gink experience, I think is the reason I'd give it to Daniel Jones.
Yeah, that was a true gink moment. Lurking asks, can Andy Van Ginkel play some running back if Jones is out for a bit? He can move. I will, maybe he's the one who gives Ty Chandler like a couple of reps break. I feel like that's not the worst idea. Let's go to Josh, who asks, how many interceptions could Van Ginkel get this year? It seems like he's on pace for an extravagant number.
Yeah, geez. So he has 2 interceptions. He almost got that one. So I guess he's on pace for what, like 6, right? Because you can only have maybe 7 if we wanted to kind of play out the averages and the almost hads and stuff like that. 7 is a lot. 7 would lead the league some years, right? So the problem, of course, for most players is that leading the league in interceptions is usually something you do as a cornerback or as a safety. Doing that as an edge rusher is obscene, I think, is like the right word for that. It's incredible. He has 73 interception yards. Like, what? Like, what in the world? He's crazy. I love it. This is shaping up to be not bad, I guess, is the best way to put it. Not bad at all. He has more interceptions this year more interception touchdowns this year than the rest of his career combined. More turnovers, if you include fumble recoveries as turnovers, than the rest of his career combined. And he has the total number of interceptions the same as the rest of his career combined. So, goodness.
on a roll. What a fantastic pickup.
Yeah. I know that there were a couple of tweets last year that said Andrew Van Ginkel is the most underrated defender in the NFL. Sometimes you see that about random players. After this pick 6, I saw like 80 tweets that were just like most underrated defender in the NFL. We are entering Robert Woods' most underrated receiver in the NFL territory from like a couple years ago. Like, this is wild. But the thing is, so he already has 3 sacks, by the way. He had 6 last year, and that was his career high. And he already has 3 this year. He already has 5 quarterback hits. His career high is 20. Like, it's nuts. But yeah, he might not be in that conversation because he might make a Pro Bowl. Like, it's wild that like Josh Metellus and Andrew Van Ginkel are entering the spot of players who are clearly not the best on their team at their position, but are best positioned to make postseason awards at their position. Right? That's not a bad place for a team to be in.
Yeah, this is a good spot, especially at the bye. Also from Josh, he asks, I just heard a pod say Jefferson had a bad day versus the Jets, but didn't he have like 100 penalty yards? It seemed like Sauce Gardner was hell-bent on just interfering on every pass.
Yeah, so
and it
Jefferson
wasn't just Sauce, now that I'm thinking about it.
Right. I mean, DJ Reed also had, I think, 2 penalties on him. So Jefferson had 92 receiving yards, and I believe he had like 61 penalty yards, so 153 yards generated on targets. Now, I don't think penalty targets count as targets in the box score. I could be wrong about that if they're accepted penalties. But he only caught 6 of his 14 targets. Now, if we include 5 more from penalties, that'd be 11, and that's fine. But I don't think that's what happened. I think it would be like 11 of 19 targets or something like that. I'll find out later when a listener corrects me. Go ahead. I'm comfortable with that. But yeah, he actually did not have a good game. He didn't have a bad game. I don't want to oversell it, but like he was 1 for 6 on contested catches. Like, that's not good. On contested catches, receivers typically win about 65-70% of them. He wins like 90% of them. So in Jefferson adjusted terms, this is like a catastrophically bad game. But yeah, he was put into a position where he had to catch a lot of contested catches. Not entirely like his fault that they were contested. He did have a fumble, right? He had a drop. I think that you could say he had more than a drop, but PFF counts 1 drop. I'd say maybe 2. Probably a contested loss instead for PFF. Either way, that's just not a good game. If you have, let's say we're not talking about Justin Jefferson. Let's say we're talking about, actually T. Higgins is probably still a little bit too good for this kind of conversation. Tank Dell, pretty good receiver. No one's confusing him for a top 20 guy. If Tank Dell had 91 receiving yards and 61 penalty yards and then also dropped the ball, let's say twice, and then fumbled, and then lost almost every contested catch opportunity, you would probably say that on like 19 targets, right? You'd probably say that it was net worth targeting this guy, but only barely. And that's just not a good place for Jefferson to be. You want it to be unambiguous that this dude had a killer game. That's who he is, right? That's what you're paying him for. A lot of money, it turns out. And not even fake money. Like, I wrote an article about his cash flow structure. Very real money. So, yeah, not a good game. Not a bad game. Definitely not a bad game. Not a good game.
And he was upset. You could tell at the end of the game when they were doing the interviews that he was disappointed in the offense and was really thankful the defense was able to bail him out there. But he was clearly critical of what was going on for him. So he wanted much more than that. The Brandon Powell doctrine asks, Darnold has the second longest time to throw this year. 3.14 seconds versus the average of 2.75. Is this a product of play design, slow processing, or something else?
That's interesting. Hold on. Let me mess with the minimums a little bit. I guess it depends on which organization, because here it has him as the tied for third. This is Brock Purdy, Jalen Hurts, 3.37, 3.15. Okay, so I think there's a couple of things at play here, but we should remember that anybody who's played quarterback for Kevin O'Connell for the Vikings has had a very long time to throw. Now, with Joshua Dobbs, that's like pretty obvious why that's the case. This guy just runs around and does stuff, right? So it's not really the same thing. But I mean, we saw it for like Nick Mullins. We saw it for Kirk Cousins a lot. So that is a feature of the offense. Now, there's a couple of ways that can happen. Some of it could be through like a really heavy play action percentage. I wouldn't say that the Vikings have a super heavy one. They're in the top third of the league in terms of play action percentage. Fine. But it's not like so heavy that it's the reason. The reason is because they hunt for deep shots. They're an explosive passing offense. That's the whole idea. That doesn't mean they actually throw at the rate that you'd expect a deep passing offense to. Now, Darnold does have an ADOT of 10.0. So in this case, yes. But some years you didn't necessarily have like a really high ADOT or a really high ADOT is depth of target, or a really high deep throw rate, like, throws over 20 yards. Like, what's the attempt percentage there? Which here, by the way, Darnold is like fourth at 15.3%. Some years you didn't have it, but it was always in the top half, right? And that's because a quarterback would decline it. But the offense has you hold on to your first read, which is almost always an explosive play, unless it's like a design screen or something, more than you would in almost any other offense. It's really digging for those explosives. That's the goal of the offense. Now, the fact that a lot of these quarterbacks also happen to have really high completion rates under this offense tells you something about the offensive design that's like really cool and interesting. But, for the most part, it's because they're hunting. And so I think that's, offensive design. I don't think that that's like a huge thing about Darnold. Let me take a look at Darnold's like career time to throw, just season long time to throw. This is the second longest he's ever thrown in his career. The longest was the 6 games he played for the Panthers. But like the 55 dropbacks he had with the 49ers, 2.73 seconds. For the rest of his career, 2.8 seconds with the Jets. Like that's which is average. So I think it's pretty clearly an offensive design thing.
Next question is from DT, who asks, which of the remaining 3 AFC South teams give the Vikings their traditional unexpected crushing loss this year?
Yeah, so obviously that could be the Jaguars, the Titans, or the Colts. And the Titans have been weird, so you could say that. The Jaguars have Trevor Lawrence, who obviously is not playing very well, but has the potential to kind of just go off. I'm going to pick the Colts. And the reason is, and I think it's different than the reason that you have, James. The reason is because the Colts have a running quarterback, and that just, from a Vikings lore perspective, that like losing to running quarterbacks that you shouldn't be losing to is like very core to their being.
You're saying that Joe Flacco is going to be a running quarterback?
No, I was saying Anthony Richardson's going to be back by then.
Oh, okay. famously mobile Joe Flacco.
Hey, did you see his run? Do you see his run this week?
I did see his run, yes.
It seems like he's got wheels. I don't know, man.
He is
moving better than the other guy his age, Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, as it turns out, somehow he's managed to figure it out. Good for him. I was gonna say the Colts for the revenge game because it will also be happening in Minnesota. So I wanted to bring that up as a potential.
There you go. Yeah.
Let's go to Kenneth.
God, revenge game. That's perfect.
Exactly. Let's go to Kenneth Allen, who asks, how has Dallas Turner looked? I haven't done any deep study, but I would have expected one of the highest picked defensive players to stand out more. Is he playing poorly, or is it just that, or is it more that he's stuck behind very good starters?
Well, he's definitely stuck behind very good starters. That's like definitely an element of like not seeing him. But yeah, no, I think that he's playing. I think he's doing what's asked of him, generally speaking, pretty well. I mean, he's just not in on rundowns that much. Like, I don't know what to say. Like he doesn't really. The Vikings don't put him down on like 3rd and short, right? And they don't put him down that much on 1st and 10. He is a supplementary pass rusher on 2nd and super long or 3rd and long. That's primarily when he's playing. And so he's doing a pretty good job of that. He did a great job against the Jets. You know, he obviously has missed a fair amount of time. But when he is in on rundowns, he's not playing very well. Okay, I just looked it up on PFF. The split on passing downs versus rundowns is crazy. 58-19. Yeah, it's not close. On the occasions that you do see him on rundowns, I mean, he's got a really cool, like I think 2 games ago, I think it was against the Packers, he had a really great tackle for loss that I think was unblocked. He just burst off the line. But when he's blocked up against the run, right now he's not doing a very good job, so that's part of it. I think as a supplementary pass rusher, he's got some really good moments and some really bad moments. I think that his technique is just clearly not developed yet, and he's going to get washed when somebody gets their hands on him. And when he gets locked up, that's kind of it. But his athleticism is there. The length is there. Which is funny because like the length is like his height was a huge issue, but he's got reasonably long arms. And the tools are there, and that's like showing up, especially against the Jets. But for the most part, he's only playing like all right and only within the particular role that's being asked of him.
Let's go to our next question, which is going to be from Hitman Stan, who asks, old school offenses that lean on pre-snap identification and split field man/zone beaters seem to be getting phased out. But are there any advantages to those systems that modern offenses like O'Connell's are missing?
Yeah, I mean, so what he's describing is that very often the route combinations that you would have on one side, it's a great route combination against man coverage. Maybe there's a rub in it. Maybe, a receiver with a good release has a go option or something like that. Maybe it is designed to work off the leverage of a receiver, so a go route turns into a curl or something like that. And then the other side is a zone beater, right? So something like smash, right, where you've got a hitch on one side, or you've got a hitch from one receiver and you've got a corner route from another receiver, and that puts the defender in the flat in conflict, whether they go up to defend against the corner, which is going to be too far away from the safety, or the corner route or flag route, which is going to be too far away from the safety, or the flat defender, and then he gives up kind of the hitch underneath, or the flat defender closes in on the hitch, giving you a lot of space to lead the receiver in the corner. Run both of those on either side, and then when you identify the coverage, you've got it. One reason that's died is because offenses, just generally speaking, have a little bit more optionality in the routes. We don't see that on the field because we don't know what option everybody has on their routes, but receivers will be asked to run different routes based off of the coverage that they identify more and more often. Not every offense has this. I'm really confident, for example, the Washington offense with Jaden Daniels and Cliff Kingsbury doesn't. But a lot more offenses have that kind of optionality. Maybe it's only one receiver, maybe it's 2 receivers. And that doesn't include receivers that run hot routes. Pretty confident, for example, that like the Eagles don't do this. But yeah, that's part of it, right? So that's the post-snap response to what defenses are doing is a significant part of it. It seems as if there's more defensive disguise than we're used to seeing in the past, so that's part of it. But I do think that there are advantages to this, right? First of all, if you've got a quarterback that's very good at pre-snap identification, which does seem to be rarer, which I think is another reason, is that the quarterback ability to identify defenses pre-snap maybe has gone down a little bit, which is why we're seeing a little bit more motion and why motion can be effective. But when you do that, you yourself are not giving up the game. So the way the Vikings defense has been really successful is that they know what the hot routes are when they blitz. And which that's not like a super complicated thing to figure out, but that's how the Van Ginkel blitz occurs, right? So he attacks the guard turns towards him, so he drops into coverage. He's dropping into coverage not where his traditional zone would be or what his zone assignment is on paper, but he's floating to the area that a quarterback would want to throw the ball against that blitz. And boom, he's got it, which is actually how zone blitzes have worked since like Dick LeBeau, right? But like if you rely on pre-snap identification and you've got a good understanding of what's happening, and your receivers aren't breaking off into hot routes and stuff like that, you've got a good idea of which route is most likely to win without falling for the traps. And so if you're good at that, you can avoid some of the cat and mouse traps that occur. And also, it's just the quick decision making that you get out of the split man zone beaters can make it really difficult to create a sack on defense. So there are some advantages to it, but I just think that the way defenses have evolved and the way offenses have evolved in response has made it really difficult for that to be kind of the currency that you work with.
Let's go to Beef Brewski, who asks, why isn't the Vikings run defense getting more love?
I don't know. It's first of all, I don't know like what needs to get more love about it. Like when people talk about the Vikings defense, they only talk about blitzing because that would be why, because blitzing is sexy. But the run defense is very good and in two different ways, right? So like obviously in total rushing yards, they're outstanding. I'll take a look at what the total rushing yards allowed is. But in per play metrics, it's actually really good. So in rush EPA, they're second in rush EPA per play. In rush success rate, they're fourth in the NFL. Like it's a really good running defense when you exclude all of the things that kind of pollute the sample, right? So the Vikings have had, I think, the fewest. They've had the most passing attempts, I want to say, against them in the league. Yeah, 230. The second most is 205, which is one reason that they are third in passing yards allowed on a per play basis. Not a huge deal. But when you take a look at like running attempts, let's take a look here. They're second in running attempts allowed. Okay, well, yeah, so they haven't given up very many yards. So it's very easy to just be like, okay, well, the reason is because people don't run the ball against them because they're always behind, so they're always trying to catch up. No, they're really good at run defense as well. 3.6 yards an attempt, which is second in the NFL. Like I said, in EPA, second as well, minus 2.34 per rush. They're second to the Chargers in EPA per play, second to the Ravens in yards given up per attempt. Great. Fantastic. Good work. I just think it's because they're really also good at pass defense. And if you could choose to talk about one thing, that's the one that you're going to talk about as a commentator. It's also easier to get good content out of. Like the way that you talk about the Brian Flores defense in the passing game is so fun, right? There's all these potential blitzers. You get to explain the concept of like, green dogging a blitz where you, blitz based off of, what the running back does and stays in protection, or red dogging a blitz where you blitz based off of what the offensive lineman does in response to what you do. This is how Van Ginkel got his interception. You get to talk about zone blitz rules. You get to talk about the unique rules about the Brian Flores scheme, which has cover 2, cover 4, cover 0. Very rarely does run cover 1, cover 3, although it does do that on occasion. You can talk about the zone. There's like a lot of things to talk about, especially with the Brian Flores defense, where it's so unique. Whereas with the run defense, there's just not a lot to break down. It's like, yeah, he filled his gap, and then he shed his block, and then he got the guy. Good job. It's just not as fun. There's not as many arrows you can draw on the screen. It sucks. So that's probably part of it too, is that you're good at both. You want to talk about passing. From a content creation perspective, you'd rather talk about like zone blitzes. But yeah.
Well, let's go to the Mad Hatter, who asks, what if we had traded for Darnold last year instead of the Pasternaut? Playoffs in 2023, Darnold falters with no off-season ramp-up, loses confidence, and we start 2024 1-4. Assuming we ended 2023 with the same record, would additional draft capital be needed for the trade meant for JJ?
Yeah, that's kind of an interesting question. Both the Vikings and Darnold seem to argue that his time with the 49ers is a big part of the reason that he's had success now. Mind you, most of his snaps at the 49ers occur after the trade deadline, and the only snaps where he's had more than 10 attempts in a game occur well after the trade deadline, week 15, week 16, week 18, game 15, game 17. So against the Ravens and the Rams. Okay. I don't know how important those 55 dropbacks were versus just time in training camp and so on. But I imagine that he would have been better in the final Pasternak games, but worse in the first Pasternak games. Like, he's a pretty good improviser who does wild stuff all the time. And Dobbs is a phenomenal improviser who does wild stuff all the time. And you kind of needed that for this first couple of games where he doesn't know the offense. Would Darnold lose confidence if he was thrust into the situation Dobbs was thrown into and didn't succeed in the same way? Maybe. Certainly seems like that kind of confidence is really important to his style of play right now. I don't know. I asked him after the game, like, hey, man, you dialed up a lot of deep shots that didn't work out, and there was like a ton of coverage on those deep shots that was really tight. At what point do you dial it back and, throw some of these underneath throws that might be a little bit more open, or are you just comfortable with all the deep shots you threw? And I really regret saying that, like, last part, the words, are you comfortable with all the deep shots you threw? Because of course I'm comfortable. How could you be a quarterback and not be comfortable with the choices you make? And it's like, yeah, I mean, when a quarterback says I'd like to have that one back, I feel like that's a pretty good example of you could be confident and comfortable in the things that you do and say in your process, but you can't have specific throws that upon retrospect you didn't like that you threw. That's what I'm asking. But I don't get clarification questions and pressers, so that's the answer I get. So, my fault for the wording I used. But it does indicate that the confidence is a critical part of how he plays, and he's very confident right now. And would he have lost confidence if he couldn't perform in that situation? Maybe. So, yeah, it's probably best that they didn't. I don't know that they would have made the playoffs, though. I think they were kind of close, weren't they? So, I don't know. Let's say they make the playoffs, but he's less confident until we start 1-4.
Yeah, that seems more likely. Wilhelm asks, every snap brought forth a noble chance, and every chance brought forth a noble pressure. Was Saleh fired for not being able to weather the London Blitz, even with a team of Jets? Or was it because of a toxic work environment due to chemtrails?
Jesus. That's a really good question. London Blitz was like a nice little feature to add into that question. Saleh was fired because he embarrassed the former ambassador.
or the Parent Trap thing. I want to throw out the Parent Trap thing as an outlier. It could be fun. It could be a very fun potential thing. Just saying.
Yeah. It's just like a really good question. Like, I don't know that there needs to be an answer, but toxic work environment due to this is really well orchestrated. Okay. Yeah, he was. I can't. This is so good. My favorite conspiracy. Let's go completely off book here. Sorry, James. My favorite conspiracy, and it's so believable if you're of a particular political persuasion, of which I kind of am, right? Which is that he got fired for wearing the Lebanese flag patch. Have you seen this, James?
I have indeed.
Yeah. I know James likes to avoid these topics on the show. Sorry.
Well, no, it is something that has been brought up before and is worth bringing up because he's worn this patch before, and it's something that, like, Sirianni has worn the Italian flag before, and, like...
That's so funny. Why is that funny and the Lebanese flag not? That's so funny to me. I don't know. Someone said, it might have been John Marcos Soresi, who's a stand-up comedian. It might have been Shane Gillis, who got canceled for... He has a really funny take that he was the last person that could make racist jokes about Asians or something like that, and then he like stepped over the line like midpoint. Like I don't know.
He had to think about Italians, yeah.
Yeah, and it was like, but you could still be racist about Italians, and it's like, kinda, yeah, man, that's funny. Being proud of being Italian is great, but I'm gonna laugh a little bit, especially like an American being proud of their Italian heritage because it's so far removed from like Italians. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen an Italian American from Jersey interact with like an Italian, but it's like it's gold. It's just so different. They have like such a different conception of what it means to be Italian. Anyway. Yeah, he's worn the Lebanese flag patch a lot. Some people who've not seen him wear it a lot thought it was a response to what's the most neutrally worded version of this? Israel bombed Lebanon. That's just the facts. So, in response to that, there were, it seems, a number of civilian deaths unrelated to Hezbollah. We don't have to discuss what that means, but certainly, if you're Lebanese, you have some worry for family that you have back home in Lebanon. So maybe he's wearing that patch out of concern there. I don't know. But maybe Woody Johnson, who is a pretty committed Israel supporter, didn't like that and maybe thought it was a statement about Israel's actions in Lebanon. And probably not. I don't know. Robert Saleh does not seem like the type, if I'm going to be 100% honest, does not seem like the type to want to make that kind of statement. But he is Lebanese, so it could change the fact that he's got family. I don't know. He certainly didn't go out of his way to make a statement about his Lebanese flag patch. Like, he just never mentioned it. And I just feel like if you wanted to, you'd go out of your way a little bit. But a lot of leftists online who vaguely follow football or don't follow football at all have decided that that's the reason. And there's a lot of evidence that Woody Johnson's like not a good person. He got investigated while he was ambassador to England for racist and sexist treatment of embassy staff. It's a whole lot. It's very easy to hate the guy, especially if you're a leftist. And this guy was the ambassador for Trump, right? Wanted to buy the NHS, was defending chlorinated chicken, which sounds bad, but I just want to be clear. The United States sells chlorinated chicken to American citizens. Seems like that's not an issue, but it sounds bad when you use the words chlorinated chicken, and England did not want it. So they don't like him there either. But a lot of reasons to think that this guy is not on the up and up from the perspective of the left that doesn't support Israel, and to think that has something to do with his. I don't think that's it. I think he got fired because he had a bunch of friends in the UK that saw him lose. So I think that's it. But great question.
Let's go to Cam X-Storm, who asks, an unsung aspect of Kevin O'Connell leadership style versus Zimmer is his willingness to let Flores cook and not feel threatened, where Zimmer tended to hold a tight leash on his offensive coordinators. Now that Luke is a contributor to wide left, how do you keep him docile and unmotivated, but also productive?
Is that like a related? Okay. So the first thing, which is more a comment than a question, I guess I don't really have much to say about that, but I agree. Great job, KOC. Luke. Okay, so I can't legally say it is a cocktail of drugs. I'm not allowed to say that. So instead, I'll say I monitor his diet closely.
Like a good employee, no, not even like a good employer should, never mind. Damian Barrett asks, who would win in a fight? A uniformed Aaron Rodgers, including helmet, or Robert Saleh?
I think a healthy Aaron Rodgers would win. I think the ankle, plus I'm not confident he's fully recovered from the Achilles. I think Robert Saleh, especially now, right? Like now he's got like extra. So Aaron Rodgers, as you heard from the opening of the show, has not only stringently denied any claims connecting him to the firing of Robert Saleh, but has taken offense to even the notion that he could be involved, which, if we're being honest, makes it feel more like he's involved than if he had just said no, right? It's like No, and I am shocked that you think that the most expensive player on the team has any influence on the team. Also, when I left Green Bay, I was really mad that they didn't let me make decisions. Like, okay, sure, guy that got mad that he wasn't allowed to keep Jake Kumaro on the roster. Um, I just like he has desired a control over the team for so long and has expressed that desire in very explicit terms. And then as soon as someone questions it, he's like, I'm not the GM. How could I possibly make the decision? F you, dude. Anyway, now that he is probably involved in this firing, I know that kind of contradicts my thesis about Woody Johnson being embarrassed, but I think they both played a role. So now that he's probably, I think Robert Saleh has just that extra bite, that extra motivation, and a lot of fights come down to want to. They really do. I think people don't really get that about fighting. Aaron Rodgers is a much, much better athlete than Robert Saleh. And if they were equally motivated and healthy, Rodgers would wash him. I don't think people understand how athletic even the least athletic NFL players are. They're crazy athletes. But a lot of fights are won because someone goes somewhere the other one doesn't want to go, especially if they're untrained fighters. That's usually what wins. Crazy wins. And right now, Robert Saleh has nothing to lose.
Yeah. I would offer to pay for that. I would pay for that on pay-per-view or YouTube TV or whatever. I would make that a thing. Deez asks, for James and Arif's Second Amendment corner, with the NFL seemingly banning anything and everything gun celebration related on the field, is Goodell after our right to bear arms?
Yeah, clearly. Both after your right to own firearms and display them and carry them openly or concealed. And also he's against ursine limbs as well.
Yeah, probably. Also, can we talk about how Gruden is handling not coaching anymore?
Oh my God. So most of you have probably seen the TikTok of him just going over like the week 4 act. I think it's week 4, right? The week 4 action. And it's just like unhinged behavior. And it's like, he's very clearly like leaning into a bit. It's like, this is who people understand me to be as John Gruden. And I'm also wearing the Chucky stuff. And his brand is now even more closely associated with Chucky, the serial killer doll, than before. And it was already a little bit before kind of a thing. And so now he's just doing it. And it's truly disturbing. And I know it's more performance than analysis, like obviously, but I still don't know what viewers are supposed to get out of it. Like John Gruden was impressed by the 18 for 18 for 296-yard performance from Jared Goff. Great. I'm glad that John Gruden was impressed by it. Again, he's doing it in creepy way. Like the whole point is the way that like he barks. Like his transition between games is barking. Right? Right? It's very clearly like you watch the whole thing. So it's very clearly like it's set up so that you've got little segments and all the segments have the same vibe. And then the snap between segments is him like barking at the camera. I hate it. Anyway, he's not handling it well. Jay Gruden's handling it crazy well, though. Do you see that? Like his tweets are great.
I haven't seen the Jay Gruden stuff. I have seen John, and unsettling, I think, is the way I would put that. That was just a bit off. Dude,
a bit.
dude was having a time. Let's go to Ben Greenhagen, PhD, who is our resident handsome listener. The question is, the Arif as anime series is very interesting, but I'm feeling like I'm missing out on a lot of context. I haven't watched much anime since Evangelion. I assume that's how that's pronounced. Can you correct me on that?
I would correct you if I knew the correct pronunciation. I obviously don't. My intuition is it's Evangelion. That's just a guess, though.
I appreciate it. I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't pronouncing something incorrectly and was therefore going to upset you in some way. I didn't want to.
Yeah.
I'm
also just a quick note. I'm looking at it. I've got Grammarly turned on, and Grammarly says that in the question it's spelled incorrectly. There's 2 L's in the question, and it's 1 L. According to Grammarly, I wouldn't know.
Evangelion, sure. Let's go to this. So the question is, can we get these produced and sold as trading cards, in like that sort of style with some information on various Arif abilities?
Okay, so the thinking about it from like a merchandising perspective, that's an awful idea. It's very expensive to make that, and you know, honestly, the audience is small. It's probably a bad idea, but it sounds so funny. And I pitched a TikTok before, so we don't have a TikTok channel. I pitched a TikTok to James before the show in response to this question. And if we opened up a TikTok channel, James, you should actually register that right now, so we don't have like a listener do it when they listen to this. Look, you just got to think about that, right?
I don't. Fine.
Look, just squat on it. We don't have to post anything. But if we did post something, it would just be one video for the whole channel for the rest of its life, and it's just us unboxing like a booster pack of these cards and explaining them, kind of like the Divorced Dads card series. It's just the one video. That's the only thing on the TikTok.
Just full of hate. That's all. Just full of hate the entire time. I could get behind that, I feel like. Let's go to our next question, which is from Arifluenza, who asks, for Arif's parenting corner, my 5-year-old daughter apparently believes that we treat music fandom like we do sports, meaning she refers to our family as a Vikings family, but also a Pink Floyd family.
Holy crap, that rules. Jesus.
How do I keep this rolling? I'm not above bribery if it comes to it.
I don't know that bribery is actually going to help you in this case. I mean, it helps with a lot of 5-year-olds for a lot of things, so I get the instinct. I don't know if this one has that, but I think you just keep doing it yourself. Like, adopt that mannerism and then just keep doing it, which I think is the easiest way. I mean, that's how kids learn anyway. So, whatever, right? Like, when you say, how can I keep this rolling, do you mean interest in Pink Floyd or treating music like sports fandom, like saying, this is a Pearl Jam family? Or do you mean like also just like random other stuff in your life? Like, this is a pepperoni pizza family or whatever, just like whatever, right? Either way, whatever the answer to that is, you just do it a lot yourself, I feel like is the best response to this. James, you're obviously less of an expert than I am, despite having kids. What's your take?
Kids love flags.
Oh my God, what a great take. Holy crap.
Make it about flags. It's easy to find a band flag. It's easy to like put logos onto like flag things. That's how you get the kid to continue to be supportive of things. It'll give them like a weird form of pride or whatever.
Yeah, and just like when you put it on a little flagpole, they get to march around with it. Jesus.
Yep. That's I'm just imagining a kid marching around with a Pink Floyd flag to another brick in the wall. It's an odd look, but I'm down.
There's a little narrative tension there, but hey, it's a kid, doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly. Ingram's left arm asks, what other Vikings backup do you want to see grace Progressive commercials? This is also not a sponsor.
Well, it's not a sponsor of the show, but it seems like Ingram's left arm is also saying the question was not sponsored, which that's good to know. I'm glad that Progressive didn't pay you for that. To me, the funniest answer is Josh Freeman.
Well, he's going to back up and he's going to somehow go over a cliff, and it'll be like remarkable.
Beautiful, right? And then you zoom out and it turns out the cliff actually is a hole all the way to the center of the earth. And he flies out the other side, kind of like the gif of the thing going into space.
Yep. If it was airing on a Tuesday, I would say Joe Webb.
Yeah, Joe Webb would be great. Sean Hill would be kind of fun, actually. But like Matt Castle definitely has the personality. Like Matt Castle in commercials is elite. Like he's so good at them. So that's not a bad one.
No, I think if we were going to choose one other one from the more recent category, I would, God, his name is just on the tip of my tongue. I feel like you've said his name 1,000,000 times. Oh, Case Cookus. There we go. We'll do Case Cookus in that. It'll be fantastic. They'll just spend the entire commercial trying to, like, pronounce his name. It'll be
Case Cookus.
Exactly. It'll be great. Logan Bolsharif asks, question for our Reef's Rankum Corner. What are the top 5 reasons for that James would have hated London, and really that his life is much better having not traveled there?
The travel times are egregious, especially when you move all the way across the city. I mentioned the 40 minutes of transit. You have to sit down a lot. I know that sitting down for more than an hour at a time sometimes can be a problem. Imagine doing that in an uncomfortable bus or transit situation. So there's that. That's one. 2, British food. Don't need to explain any more than that. 3, the awful accents everyone has. Good Lord. They just don't speak it correctly. They just don't speak American correctly. I don't get it.
The British aren't very good at speaking American?
Yeah, I don't really understand. It's like a very easy language to learn, right? Famously.
Famously. Yes. Yeah. That is what many people are saying when they try to learn English. Just how easy and how the rules just seem standard and not like willy-nilly at all. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's one of them. So that's 3. So I think 4, everything's on the wrong side of the road. So it always feels like you're going to get hit by a car, like all the time. Which, who said that recently? Sauce Gardner. Like, he got onto the bus and he thought they were going to get into an accident because he didn't even know that they were on the wrong side of the road.
Which is funny to me. There are countries that like specifically you drive on the right side, you drive on the wrong side of the road, but like but they made it so that you had to have the steering wheel on the other side. So it's like it's American steering, but like British like driving style, and it causes so many problems. Like everyone who is involved in that just like looks miserable.
Yeah, that sounds awful. By the way, most of the world, contrary to like other elements that are like American versus British, and this line's on the American side of things, contrary to that, most of the world does right-hand traffic driving. Like it's the British. And I didn't know this because in India and Bangladesh, they also do it the British way. So I was just like, oh, most of the world probably does it left, and the United States is weird. No. Right-hand traffic is like normalized throughout most of the world, and it's just some British colonies and the British.
Wow. That's just a fun sentence. Let's go to one more question from Logan Bolsharif, who asks, question for Arif's Time Loop Corner. You've just watched the Vikings lose the NFC Championship game. Well, that sucked. You go to sleep. You wake up. It's August. Day 1 of training camp. You are stuck in a time loop. What Vikings NFC Championship loss season would you like to be stuck in a time loop for? 98, 2000, 2009, or 17? Similar Groundhog Days rule apply, except you do get to sleep normal for 5 months until the NFC Championship loss, and when you wake up, then, of course, you wake up in August. Of course, if you die, you wake up in August.
Right. So all of the time loop shows and movies have a way to get out of the time loop. And it just feels like the rules don't allow me to get out. And so all of these are hell. There's no question, no way none of these are hell. I'm going to assume that the way to get out of the time loop, over time, you learn, because you have to spend time learning the rules in the movie, but I'm going to assert right now, is find some way to engineer that the Vikings win. And for me, I think the easiest one is 98. Because literally anything could happen to the Falcons and it's over, right? Like that one's so close. I could probably just go like Nancy Kerrigan on the bit and take a knee to Scott Chandler's, or take a bat to Scott Chandler's knees at some point, right? Like that's possible. But yeah, so that's probably the easiest. Like I can't make Brett Favre not throw that pick. There's no universe where I could guarantee that, right?
Realistically, he is probably not playing in that Super Bowl game.
Yeah. Like his ankle is so banged up. It was banged up heading into the game, right? Like they were literally lubing it. Like they were greasing it. Like it was just bad. And then a series of illegal activities made it worse. So probably not that. 17, I just don't know how they get out of that game. I don't know how many things a regular fan could do to get out of that. Now, the thing is, I'm going to also assume that I can't get caught engineering the win. That's fine. That's why I think you want the easiest one, which is 98. So I think that one also, it is the most fun one for a couple of reasons. One, Randy Moss. Two, you have to like live the rest of your life. You don't just go game to game. And 98 was an awesome year. A bunch of great video games came out. I was a child, so I didn't have to worry about stuff. That's key, I think, to a lot of this. The music was great. Like, I don't know. The 90s, man. We all have an irrational amount of nostalgia for it, for probably bad reasons, but at least a reason. So I'm going to pick that for like the off-field elements as well.
If I was looking at it, I mean, for you anyway, for the 2017 season, maybe you travel to Los Angeles and convince Carson Wentz to not take a header into the end zone, and which flips him around and tears his ACL.
You can't.
And the Vikings are able to beat him in the NFC Championship game, and not Nick Foles, who sold his soul to somebody to make that happen.
You can't engineer a reality where I have to save Carson Wentz.
I think I just did. I think
that's so bad. The way to get out of it, okay, I mean, that's much more appropriate to these movie type rules, though.
Yep.
The way to get out of the time loop is to save Carson. Jesus Christ, that's diabolical.
It's perfect. It's everything that these movies should be. This is your learning piano. This is your learning piano in Groundhog Day. This is how you get out of this. I'm afraid you're going to have to save Carson Wentz.
That's my student.
Let's go to Football's Misandrous Niche, who asks, for Arif's British Affairs Corner, what is your position on the contentious Geronimo the Alpaca incident? Did Geronimo deserve his death? Do you care to explain to the listeners what this is about?
Yeah, okay. So Geronimo is the name of an alpaca. You may have gathered that from the question. Who was imported from New Zealand to the UK. In the UK, they found that Geronimo had bovine tuberculosis, referred to as BTB. The order came down, it's just UK law, to execute this alpaca. I was going to say llama for a second, this alpaca. That caused a lot of controversy. Why? Well, there were 4 skin tests done on the alpaca before he was imported into the UK. He tested negative on all of them. He was put into quarantine upon arrival, tested twice. These are blood tests, tested positive on both of them. But unfortunately, very quickly prior to the blood test, took a vaccine for BTB, which some experts have argued led to an increase in the number of antibodies that he had that would register on these types of tests, because that's how you typically test for a virus, not for the actual virus itself, but for the antibodies that the virus produces. Whatever reason, they're easier to detect, I think. Okay. So they argue this in court. They lose in court. The alpaca is executed. This causes a lot of controversy because, 1, it is a cute animal. 2, they're British. What else do they have to care about? 3, seems like a miscarriage of justice, right? Now, the government experts that testified in these court cases suggested that it was actually absurd that a vaccine could do this, and suggested that the odds of this were less than 1%. If that was the only testimony from experts, I would take their side on it, because at some point you got to make a decision. All of these are probabilities, and that's actually a pretty good set of probabilities to deal with in this sort of thing. But it turns out the Royal College of, I don't know, veterinarians or something like that, said no, actually, and most of them signed a letter indicating that actually this is a miscarriage of justice and this sets a really bad precedent and we need to pay attention to the science. Okay, great. So now I'm taking their side. That's probably where I end up. I told James, okay, that's enough of the Wikipedia article. I'm done. But we were doing some pre-show prep and I didn't need to pay attention for it. So I scrolled down a little bit. And I guess, and I didn't pay much attention because I was doing other stuff, but it sounds like they dissected the body afterwards and found some tuberculosis lesions on the inside of his skin or something, which demonstrated the government's point. I literally just have no idea, and I'm sure this is answered somewhere in the Wikipedia article I skimmed, why he couldn't stay in quarantine for even longer until after the vaccine like ran its course and then you take the test. Like I don't know why not that. That seems like such the simple answer. Is it transmissible to humans and then humans transmit it somewhere else? Then if that's true, then what's the point of quarantine? I don't get it. The preserving livestock is super important. I get that. I get it. But there was clearly a quarantine process already. Why can't I don't understand. That's my take.
You feel better after getting that out?
No. Why did I have to learn any of this?
I'd say you were tricked into it, but that's kind of how these mailbag questions work. Room Bull Sharif asks, with Turkey banning Discord, should Arif be on here more often to stick it to the trash meat?
No. I mean, yeah, that's a great way to trick me to getting into the Discord that is ostensibly for talking to me. But no, first of all, the country of Turkey is not the same as the meat Turkey. Second, if you were an autocratic regime, you would ban Discord, right? Like this is normal. That's understandable.
You're just saying that because the Discord that you're associated with here just likes to post pictures of you as the Futurama guy.
All they do is bully me. Why would I be there?
Because we love you.
No, all you do is bully. I just said this.
How is it bullying to put you as the guy from Futurama who says that the best kind of correct, being technically correct is the best kind of being correct? How is that? Okay, how is that bullying? That's fantastic.
Okay,
that's appropriate.
It's self-evidently bullying to caricaturize someone. That's obviously the case. That doesn't need more explanation. Second, even if to an outside observer it is awesome, that doesn't make it not bullying. It just makes it bullying but popular. Like, you get that, right?
Bullying but popular. It's just not registering.
That's a lot of bullying, James. A lot of bullying turns out to be popular. James asked me yesterday,
I think
whether
so.
I liked that one more or the most recent anime drawing of me, which Jotaro.
Don't ask me. I have no idea.
From JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, the guy whose hat is also his hair. He drew that. I, of course, don't have hair, so it turned out to just be my bald head, which, again, for an outside observer is extremely funny, but that's obviously bullying. And he asked me if I liked that one more or being the guy from Futurama who says technically correct is the best kind of correct. And I didn't answer, so James was like, okay, well, which one induces the least amount of rage? And it's like, clearly the Futurama one. And then he said, okay, good to know. And that's a concerning response. So I don't know what's going to happen now.
Are we going to have to talk to the marriage counselor again? Because I'm tired of them being on your side.
Yeah, it's kind of weird how that happens, James. I wonder why that is.
It's called gaslighting, and you've been saying it wrong for 10 years. I died at that tweet. Oh my God.
This is so good.
It's called gaslighting. Let's finish up with BlackRock Sports Group, who asks for a James's relationship corner. I successfully negotiated with my wife to have her take my son to swim lessons, even though it was my turn this week. Unfortunately, it was a baseball-style trade where she is taking him today for a, quote, favor to be named later. Will I regret this trade?
Uncharacteristically poor negotiation from a private equity firm here. Incredible that you didn't tilt it extremely in your favor. Anyway, the answer to this question is really dependent on your relationship with your wife.
If this were Dawn, this would be a different situation.
Yeah. If all of your trades are generally conducted with fair negotiations from the outset, you don't have to negotiate down to fair. she's probably going to pick a favor that's about as onerous as taking the son to swim lessons. But if that's even remotely untrue, you have definitely screwed yourself. So pretty poor negotiating in any circumstance, but also worse if you constantly have to negotiate down. Then you're in a bad spot.
Yeah, the will I regret this? I regret this for you. I can't see this going really well. But have fun with that. You decided to make the trade, and there was no like cash considerations or anything involved, so it was fairly cut and dry. But
yeah, no protected picks. You did not protect any chores.
Nope, no protected picks.
That's rough. Next time at least have a list of protected chores.
Yeah, this cannot include a Sunday morning or Sunday afternoon trip to IKEA. Just make that abundantly clear. This is something that cannot be involved.
Well, unless it's literally this week. Right?
This week, maybe. Just try to avoid fights. And with that, that's going to be the end of this episode of Norse Code. Arif, what do you have to plug?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, that piece about the Titans and the Titanic, again, the people who read it seemed to like really like it. Ed Zitron called it insane. I loved it. That was nice to hear. I have a friend who like only occasionally reads my pieces, which is fine. Like most of my friends don't even care about football, so that's an upgrade. And he saw the title of the piece and he's like, "Are you an insane person?" Which is, I think it's always a great response to pieces.
I think I posted something similar in the Discord. When I got the email, I went, "Arif, you Armenian genius."
and he read it and he was like, "Arif, is this a football article?" Because it just starts with like the history of the Titanic. Like it's just like in Belfast. Like it doesn't talk about the game for like 3 paragraphs, right? He's like, "Is this a football article? Did you like post like an old high school essay or something like that?" Which, first of all, I wrote way worse than that in high school, please. And he goes through it and he's like, "Oh my God, this is great." So I just read it. That's fantastic. Luke's coming up with a piece later. It's also, from my understanding, extremely abstract. So this is the week for that. Normally Luke does some kind of film breakdown with some like hackneyed metaphor. I can't complain. My whole piece was a hackneyed metaphor. But when it's Luke, I get mad. So some like random, like let's talk about golf swings or a tennis player or whatever. And then he works it into the piece, whatever. I don't know that this will involve any film. Maybe it'll involve some. I don't know. It's going to be a weird one. So stay tuned. So that's over at Wide Left Out Football. Also, like I mentioned, I talked to Zitron. That's for the 60-minute drill. We had a ton of fun. Normally our episodes have like some theme, like we talk about private equity or the porn house or whatever. This time we just kind of shot the breeze. It was a ton of fun. So I think you'll all enjoy that.
Well, that's going to be it for this episode of Norse Code. We will be back next Thursday to preview the Lions game. So for Arif, my name is James. Thank you guys so much for listening. And please remember to try to avoid situations where it is bullying, but popular. And we'll be back next week. Norse Code is the largest and only division of Norse Code LLC. You can find Norse Code on the Daily Norseman, SB Nation's Vikings blog at dailynorseman.com. You can also find it on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Play, and wherever fine podcasts are aggregated. Our Vikings blogger extraordinaire and generally useful human is Arif Hassan of... And he can be found on Twitter at Arif Hassan NFL. I'm your producer and host, and my name is James Pagashnik. You can find me at the show's official Twitter feed at NorseCodeDN or at my personal account at Big Mono. If you'd like to donate a few bucks to the show, you can do so in a couple of different ways. You can go to patreon.com/NorseCode and donate there. For $3.50 a month, you get bonus material and more. You can also go to paypal.me/NorseCode for a one-time donation, or you can go to norsecode.threadless.com and pick up some Norse Code merch. Any questions or comments that cannot fit in a tweet can be sent to norsecodepodcast@gmail.com. On behalf of the Norse Code staff, we thank you so much for listening.
Our formula is this.
Hey, all things are possible through the power of Ben DiNucci.